Now welcome to another lightning response video, where this time we got two questions which are kind of related to each other, and we'll start with this one from Jet Blast, who asked, "Hey Thor, I've always thought that my temperament for Star Wars, both positive and negative, is pretty much closely aligned with yours. As such, I'm enjoying the Ahsoka series, particularly what Dave did with Anakin in Episode 5, but I can't help but be distracted by the elephant in the room, the sequel trilogy. What's the point of all this? What's the point of showing Anakin as a father figure, able to manipulate both the light and dark sides of the Force on command, showing that he is indeed the chosen one, the one who maintains balance when the sequel trilogy tells us that Palpatine had been the galaxy's puppet master all along? What is the point of Ahsoka's quest to defeat Thrawn and bring back Sabine and Ezra if the First Order is going to rise with or without his superior leadership and strategic abilities? Doesn't the sequel trilogy make all of the Mandalorian-related series pointless? Would love to hear your thoughts. Thanks." And to be completely honest, I've really been trying not to think about all that stuff, all the sequel trilogy stuff, when it comes to the Ahsoka series, because I have been enjoying this show for what it is. And when it comes right down to it, if the story or the series is good in and of itself, if you enjoy watching it, you could certainly argue it's not pointless. That the most important factor when it comes to entertainment is, were you entertained or not? Did you like it or not? Though that said, no you can't, or it's kind of hard to ignore the larger story or the greater context this all takes place in. It's not easy to ignore the Sith elephant in the room. Part of the joy of being a Star Wars fan is that larger story and how things fit together. And so we do very much have the problem of Anakin failing as the chosen one, failing to destroy the Sith as it was foretold he would by the prophecy, and as he once did at the end of Return of the Jedi. And we could certainly argue that if what we see in this latest episode of Ahsoka is indeed the real Anakin Skywalker, or his Force ghost, which has his consciousness, that has all his memories, then what he really should have said to Ahsoka is, "Snap out of it, Snips, we don't have time for your self-doubts and self-pity because Palpatine isn't really gone. He survived and he's got a massive fleet of Death Star destroyers on a planet called Exegol. That Thrawn isn't even the real threat or biggest problem right now. And do keep in mind that, according to the comics anyway, not that Filoni reads or pays attention to those, but Darth Vader or Anakin saw the creation of the Sith fleet on Exegol shortly after the events of The Empire Strikes Back, meaning again he should really be telling Ahsoka about all that. He even seems to try to warn Luke about all of it later on in the book Shadow of the Sith, though again, holding true to books and comics doesn't seem to be Dave Filoni's thing. Either way here, I certainly get that it might be harder to get truly vested in the current story or in the Ahsoka series when you know and very much care about that larger context, when you know what this all has to lead to, that all paths lead to the sequel trilogy. Though honestly, I don't think Dave Filoni or Jon Favreau are trying to make the Mandoverse nothing more than a stepping stone to those films, nothing but a setup for them. I think that, yes, there will be connections, but they want this to be its own thing and its own story first and foremost. They're trying to fill the 30-year gap between the trilogies with something more than, this is why the sequels happened, while also, again, likely taking it all into consideration and making sure things align for the most part. But it could very well be that we're going to another galaxy as a way to divert around all that, to divert around those films and to tell a very independent story. For them to have the freedom to tell basically whatever kind of story they want that doesn't have to, again, be just a stepping stone to the sequels. Alright, and our other question then comes to us from Bill the Clear, who asked, "Hey Thor, I feel like member berries and fan service are getting thrown around way too much these days. It's become a way to enter an argument with a shield of sorts. Throw around some derogatory terms and claim some sort of intellectual victory. The character development was key in this episode. I appreciate you taking on the subject. I gave up a while ago." And yeah, I do think that member berries or nostalgia bait or fan service or any of the like, they've become terms where just labeling something as such based on some very loose parameters is not only the entire argument but the supposed win condition as well. It's an all-in-one term that doesn't require any sort of defense, hence why I personally kind of think of it more like a sword than a shield, but whatever, same point essentially. And no, Star Wars is not even close to the only place something like this happens. But anyway, basically what I'm saying here is that the claim is that by bringing back virtually anything that we've seen before in Star Wars, like a legacy character, like Anakin Skywalker, it can or should automatically qualify as member berries. It's using or relying on something from the past to, in some capacity, large or small, doesn't matter, it's using it to sell a new story instead of the new one relying completely on its own merits. And it doesn't really matter how exactly this old character or ship or whatever it might be It doesn't matter how it's being used in the new story. It doesn't matter if it's actually extremely relevant or not to the story or the character at hand, which you can certainly argue Anakin is very important to Ahsoka and makes sense showing up in this series. It can only be bad because it's been deemed by the one making the argument that this is either inherently bad, that member berries are inherently bad because they just are, or because it's seen as nothing more than a cheap tactic to get people to watch. Furthermore, it's not only irrelevant if you actually enjoyed it or not, but enjoying it or attempting to defend it in any way means you are now part of a larger problem. It means you don't want Star Wars to grow beyond the past and just want the same things regurgitated to you time and time and time again. You are the reason why Star Wars sucks today is basically what they're arguing in a very roundabout way. And never mind that oftentimes those using the member berries label or argument will also be the first to criticize anything new that is attempted with Star Wars. And usually they won't like it because it doesn't honor the past, ironically enough, that it's messing with the legacy and lore of Star Wars. You're saying Star Wars can't move beyond its past and doesn't do enough to honor it all at the same time. And look, I'm all for fair criticism against Star Wars. I'm all for holding Disney and Lucasfilm accountable for the content they create, especially when it comes to how they do or don't use the lore or legacy characters, because they are what made this franchise what it is today. I've made plenty of videos going into things that I thought were bad or wrong or just didn't work for Star Wars here in the Disney era. But even still, a lot of those are just my opinions, and they don't mean I can or should tell you why you're not allowed to like something or that you're wrong for liking something. Like I was just saying in response to the previous comment, enjoyment is a completely subjective thing and everyone's criteria for liking something is going to be different. For some, any connection to the sequels will ruin their enjoyment of Ahsoka or the Mandoverse on the whole because they don't want to see anything leading to that in any way, shape, or form. While for others, they'll compartmentalize it. They'll have their own headcanon, one that doesn't include the sequels, and they'll just enjoy Ahsoka and the appearance of Anakin for what that is without worrying about anything beyond how much they enjoyed it in the story they're watching now. And there's nothing wrong with either of those beliefs or approaches, or any other belief or approach, again, when it comes to your personal, subjective enjoyment of entertainment. And so, basically, why I don't like the whole member berries argument is because all it really boils down to is a way to say you're not only wrong for liking this, but again, you're a part of the problem with Star Wars. That we can't get good Star Wars because you want to hold on to the parts of it that mean the most to you and are what made you a fan of it in the first place. You're wrong for loving that you saw a favorite character again and that they were honored and it connected well to the current story, and should only want new ones to be the highlight of the story because the only way to honor the lore and history of Star Wars going forward is to completely ignore it at all times. And don't get me wrong, I think there is a very fine line between bringing back old characters and having it work and make sense in the story, and then just using them because they know fans will eat it up and perhaps ignore other issues with the series. I'm not condoning the use of member berries as much as I'm saying that, like with all things, there is some nuance here. Well, that's all I got for this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about any or all of this. Or you can ask a question for a future lightning response video. Just start your comment off with "Hey Thor" and then ask away. Whatever you choose to do, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.